Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Lora O'Brien and John O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
Hello, this is Lora O'Brien of the Irish Pagan School. I'm here with one of our esteemed teachers and colleagues, Dr. Gillian Kenny, and we've just been having a little chat before we come on camera here, and we're talking about fairies. So, Gillian, do you want to tell us your experience at a recent site visit that you did with some other visitors and tourists and that, and there was a lot of misinformation being passed around, wasn't there?
Well, yeah. So I was trying my best to keep quiet because I wasn't leading it. But there was quite a lot of behaviour towards the tour guide asking actively how people from who were visitors could meet fairies and what they needed to do. And eventually I kind of broke and I sort of went, you don't want to meet them.
Look.
And they didn't quite understand. And I said, it's not like Tinkerbell or anything you see on the telly, I said it's quite a complex society and quite a complex relationship with humanity. So I said the best thing is to share your space respectfully. And if you see one, just start running.
Yeah, just start running. Shout sorry over your
Just
shoulder.
go, I'm really sorry for existing. Please don't hurt me and run away.
Absolutely. And
just hope you don't piss someone off. That's basically all you can do, really.
That's really it. And I think that the fairy doors and, inviting fairies into your home and the fairy walks and all that stuff that we're putting up with now. And we seem to be accepting this as it's a feedback from American culture. It started in the 90s in the US. And it seems to be becoming integrated into parents, particularly with small children. And I'm like, is this a fairy conspiracy? Have they actually, have they infiltrated us? And this is how they're getting their feed now.
Are they rebranding? I don't know. I do think so that's interesting. This idea, which that your kids are otherworldly. Everybody loves their children. Everyone's child is magnificent and fantastic. What you don't want is to actually have a changeling in your house, because that means your child is somewhere else, not having a nice time of it, or gone.
Fed to some backish.
Yeah. So I mean, it's very strange. I think it's about people possibly definitely not understanding the ramifications of interactions with the she, as they have been expressed over probably thousands of years within Irish culture, that there's this idea of this community, that there's these otherworldly, and they, if you fuck around with them, you find out. It's that simple. And you might not even have to fuck around with them to find out. They might just not really want you there or like you very much.
For their own reasons.
They may just decide. And I think maybe people don't like the ramifications of that, because it can make us feel even more vulnerable in an uncertain world. In a world where people find it very difficult sometimes just to get on, if you add that in. But there's lots of ways of kind of living your life where you kind of rub alongside them, but don't, you're careful not to do the things that we know will piss them off. But it struck me as just really juvenile, really, and betraying a real lack of understanding, because that you don't want that in your life. Certainly there's, as you, Laura, will know, and practitioners will know, there are ways to approach. But the whole idea of it's just infantilizing it. I mean, I had one person go, "Oh, we saw loads of fairy doors in a forest." Well, those fairies are not going to have anything to do with that crap. Let me tell you that much. It's about, I think, an overlay of paternalism on the Irish tradition, on infantilizing a much older way of thinking and looking at the world, and of kind of branding it up as some kind of Netflix friendly nonsense. And it's not like that. It's older and weirder and deeper. than most people can imagine. And actually, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about it's difficult to tap into that in popular culture. I don't know how you do it. Maybe you need a Guillermo del Toro who'll make odd films about it, so people will realize some of them have murderous intent. Steer clear.
Yeah, and it really is. I mean, if I had to put a vibe on it, like that would be it. I think Cartoon Saloon do a really good job. For getting the weirdness, but not making it too scary, I suppose. But I think their work has been quite accurate and quite on point. There's a couple of new horror films, which unfortunately I can't remember the names of. People can put them in the comments below. But there's definitely one about Changeling where the mother, I think, is being taken, and they're quite unsettling. So maybe horror is the way to go, trying to get the
That
image
kind
across.
of unsettling. I mean, I mean, it's just, I think it's a weirdness to it and to the stories that's kind of missing now in an era of electricity and technology and scientific rationalism. That's not to say these things don't exist anymore. It's just to say I don't think we can process what it means, or many people can. I think they have to slightly commodify everything. And it has to be something that is relatable on a human level. I think the human kind of soul recoils from stuff where you are the predated one, where we're not the top of the food chain. And I think that really, really frightens the life out of people. And so they go, actually, it's Tinkerbell. Actually, it isn't.
Yeah.
But
whatever
and if
gets
you think
through
that,
the night,
you're gonna regret that. It's like, I just think I think it must be. I remember years ago trying to think about what it would be like, to actually engage in that, and I always remember thinking, I think it would be like dealing with like a human-sized cat who will maybe put up with you for a while, but might then just bat you away. And when you look into a cat's eyes, it is an animal intelligence. It's very different. And I think to me, I always rationalized it like that. It might look a bit the same, but you look in, you go, oh, that's not the same at all, really, is it? No.
Yeah.
So
our friend Morgan Daimler has a great analogy, I suppose, where they would get a lot of people saying, well, I'm friends with the fairies and I've never gotten hurt and I'm fine and they're they take care of me and all the rest of it. And Morgan put it to me that it was like, that documentary about the guy who thinks that he's friends with the grizzly bears.
The bear. Yes.
And him and his girlfriend end up going out and like living with the bears and they ate him. Yeah. And it's all fine until it's not. I think.
Well, I kind of get it, but again, I think it's a human understanding of something that isn't. I think it's about most human beings want to get on well and make friends and have harmonious relationships, and there's a lack of understanding about, well, why can't that happen, and why can't I make that happen by saying these things? You can say it till the cows come home. It won't happen because all the stories and all the folklore for centuries have told us time and time again that this is not how you approach these in these beings. This is a different way of existing.
Absolutely.
And you have to make space and room for it.
Absolutely.
So you can call them your mates all you like, but that doesn't mean they're, well, I hope they don't invite you around to the brew.
Yeah.
That's what you don't want. Yeah.
You don't want to get stuck there.
That's nothing to eat and drink for me,
that's when your man's up with a changeling.
I'm grand. Yeah. No, I'm grand. No, I'm full. No, I just had a cup of tea. Anyway, where's the exit? Thanks a million. Just that stone there, is it?
This chain that I like carry with me at all times. We actually have a chain in the car. We literally have an iron chain in the car that came from my granddad's friend's farm, who was like a horse whisperer. And when the farm was being sold and everything, there was a little piece of iron chain that used to close the barn door, and I took it with me. It had fallen on the ground, and I thought it was going to get lost or whatever. So I took it with me, and that is literally our talisman that we keep in our car for site visits, and it is carried onto the site with us in case of needed.
Wait, really, Laura?
Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah,
That's,
yeah, yeah.
okay. Well, you
And
know
there's
more
been
about this than I do, so yeah, 100%. Yeah. But
there has been a couple of times where that chain has had to come out and be wrapped around John's hand, like to literally, and I don't know, just to get us out of there safely. Here's our little ward, and we're walking now, and this
oh
chain
my
is clearing
God.
the way, because you get ambushed or you get surrounded sometimes by things that may or may not be there, let's say.
Well, I mean, I've brushed against it. Like I read the stuff and all the rest of it. And then I remember doing a piece of work I was doing years ago, and it called for, unusually for me because it's usually desk bound. I had to get out and about and find find wells.
Mm.
Okay, because there was references to these wells, and in them, no one knew where they were.
Mm.
Anyway, we had to get out, and it was over by Douth, over by Newgrange in Brunabony. Anyway, went walking, out and about, and asking around locally where are they. People were like, I think there's a well, such a place. And then, so someone said to me, just be really careful when you're going to look for the well. So I'm like, no, I'm fine. I've got my wellies and I've got blah, blah. And they went, no, they said, if you have any jewelry, leave it in your car.
Mm.
What? I was like, why? And they were like, well, sometimes they like to take jewelry.
Mm.
So anyway, okay. I took off my jewelry because I'd done enough reading by then to know a person in the group didn't.
Right.
And guess who had no necklace when they got back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It was taken.
Yeah.
And we were told. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he was like, oh, well, it must have fallen off. So I was walking. Okay.
Yeah.
Funny how it fell there, though, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it happens. It
The
definitely
little
happens.
token.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's your sacrifice. That's your toll. Your toll for access.
Actually, I'm slightly glad he did leave it on, because if we hadn't had a toll, could be still walking around that field.
There are sites, Gillian, and I'm not going to name names, but there are sites where I've built relationships with over the years. And I mean, anybody who knows me can probably guess where I'm talking about. But there's one particular site that cattle used to be bled on the hills years and years ago, right? And that's not done anymore.
Mm.
And I mean, that's sites all over the country. In fairness, that was a very common practice at the Altona. And that's when the offerings were being made, basically, and they were being driven through the fires and all the rest of it. So we have lots of references to that, and that happens all over the country. But there are things that are happening in and around some of these sites that are an unusual level of bad luck, let's say, right? Between accidents and all the rest of it, right? An unusual level of bad luck. And I think I'm probably saying too much, but I took it upon myself a couple of years ago to start going up and giving an offering at the Altona on one of these sites in particular, after an incident. And I don't know if that's going to make any difference. I don't know if it will, but it makes me feel better anyway. It makes me feel like I'm
also,
doing something about it.
It can do no harm.
It can do no harm.
It can do no harm.
Not.
So
absolutely not.
Why not?
But there are blood offerings being made at some of these sites where for years and years and years there was just a very unusual level of bad luck, And I haven't heard of anything since, but it's not to say that bad things don't happen. Obviously bad things happen all the time, but just it just gets to the point where, like, I've been doing this for over 30 years, like actively kind of in and out and paying attention to these things for over 30 years now. And it gets to the point where, one necklace could be a coincidence, but then when you have somebody who lives there, and obviously they're regularly getting reports of the same thing happening over and over again, like one necklace might be a coincidence. That guy might have just lost it while he was walking, whatever, that person. But when that person who's living in the area has heard that 100, 200, 300 times, where do you draw the line at coincidences,
Hello, this is Lora O'Brien, and I want to make sure that you get access to our free gift for you, which is the Roots and Reverence Ancestral Connection Toolkit. So this is a 5-day guided exploration, which will be delivered to you free over email series, and it's as enlightening as it is grounding. It's designed for anyone who feels a kinship with Irish paganism, whether you carry Ireland in your blood, your heart, or the soul memories of lifetime past. There is no cost, only the promise of authentic connection to Ireland, as ever from us. So go to irishpagan.school/roots, that's ROOTS, to get your ancestral connection toolkit. And again, it's all free, delivered free over 5 days. There's resources, there's exercises, there's connection, there's all sorts of cool stuff. So I hope you enjoy that. It is our free gift to you for being a valued podcast member. So back to the episode.
It's what fascinates me. There's a couple of things about it that fascinates me. First of all, it's the turn that off. It's the acceptance that this will happen. So that's not something we're used to in the modern world, and certainly not in Western societies when I talk about the modern world. But Ireland still appears to have it, where people are actually comfortable to say that to you. I can't imagine being told that, say, if I went to the UK. People might think it, but they wouldn't say it. So it's that idea that, well, actually, this is what's going to happen. And then the kind of conversation with, okay, then, well, I'll take off my jewelry and leave it in the car. And the people who didn't, that's what happened to them. But I think it's also when people don't pay heed to that, when they dismiss it and when they're taught to, of course you're going to question it. Of course you're going to go, part of you's going to go, really? But I think it's also culturally just respectful to kind of listen and go, do you know what? Okay, maybe there's something to this. Maybe it isn't these beings taking them. Maybe there's something else, but I should just listen to. And I think for quite a lot of Irish history, that was just completely dismissed as ridiculous kind of Irish imaginings and characterized as the kind of ravings of an uncivilized race. And I think part of adhering to that now is, to me, it's honouring in a certain way a life that went on before, with parts of it, where it's not by any means an ideal life, but it's a small thing you can do now to go, actually, maybe I should just listen to this. And maybe I don't agree with it, or I think it's a different explanation, but it does no harm to listen and to wonder at a culture that can still do this. In the 21st century, people can still go, actually, you don't want to go that way, because if you do that, you'll end up on a stray sod. Okay, then I'll go the other way. Fine. It makes no difference to me. I understand people are like, well, slide into, medievalism, which is another whole issue I have, but a slide into, this kind of thinking. I don't think it is that. I think you can happily live in a 21st century world with technology and internet, and you can still go, actually, this is a teaching, and this is something that's come to us. So let's just take 5 minutes and go, I'm going to listen to this. This is interesting.
This is literal ancestral wisdom. People pay big money for that out and about in the world. And
yes,
here we are in Ireland, giving it away for free.
And I think, Laura, I think the history is long and has often been terrible. But one of the silver linings is that much of this wisdom can still be tapped into. That it wasn't all lost. We know about the Gaelic language decline, but a lot of the folklore and a lot of those locally held beliefs are still there. So that's quite interesting. if anyone has ever lived in England in particular, English folklore is wiped out. It's quite a lot of it that the Normans came in and went no. So there's gaps elsewhere, and I think there's a way of living here which is, you meet people here in Ireland. I went for a walk up Slieve League in Donegal the other day, and 5 minutes in, and we're talking about ghosts. 10 minutes in, and she's telling me, well, there's the bit in the mountain where Anya was swallowed. Right, brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You're straight in. It's like, oh yeah, well, I had a ghost once, so did you? I lived in a house with a ghost. It's just And
Gillian,
she's a rational being. I'm a rational being.
absolutely,
But it's
absolutely.
interesting.
Gillian, I think the best example of that was I was living in Roscommon, and in Castlereagh Prison they had like an outreach program, so it was like a writers in prisons thing. So they asked me to go in and like teach about, writing and history research, and kind of, I was a non-fiction author at the time, and so I had to go in and start teaching some class. Well, I didn't have to. I wanted to. They invited me. So
Hmm.
so I went in and I started doing some writing stuff, but then they got really interested in the local history stuff. So I started doing a little bit of that. So I was booked for a couple of classes in a series. And the first time I went in to teach this local history class, there was a room full of lads like, what the fuck is this? Like, we're ticking our box to be here or whatever. Like, and there's,
Yeah.
you know, um, it was quite intimidating, let me just tell you.
What's this else shite?
Yeah,
What
yeah,
is
exactly,
this?
exactly. So the first thing I did was start to ask them for their stories, you know,
Oh, great. Okay.
because they're all Irish lads, like, so. And some of them, there was a lot of northern prisoners. There's political prisoners. There was all sorts in there, right? Um, so I started to ask them for their stories, and they're like, "What stories? That's no shite. Like, what are you talking about?" And I was like, "None of you's ever heard about the Banshee." Like, that's always the classic one,
Oh,
right?
straight in.
Always the classic one, straight in with Banshee.
Oh, yeah. It would a biggie.
Yeah. And it was like, well, no, like, oh, well, see, my nana used to tell me that, like, there was this one time when her cousins, you know, and as soon as one of them, and initially very resistant, and then it was like, oh, well, actually, yeah, like, I told a little story, like, something that kind of would trigger the memory. I fucking triggered memories in nearly every single one of them. And when I came in the following week, what I got was a load of them had been on the phones or written letters or whatever they were doing, to parents, to grandparents, to cousins, to figure out, like, was there something? Am I misremembering this or whatever? So I got either expansions on the stories, more details. They had literally gone and done homework,
Brilliant.
and I was able to bring out maps, and I was able to
Oh, my God.
show me where this happened, and we started marking it on this map, and
Oh, my God.
and
Banshee
it just
detective.
like brought the whole room together, and like the lads are, they were all like, "Wow, this is so cool."
Oh, yeah.
And
It's
honestly,
great.
within a half an hour, like, I had them engaged, into it. But they all had stories. They all had. I honestly don't think by the end of that, I don't think one of them had not either remembered something or found out something from their own family or something. Not just Banshee, also all sorts. We got death coaches. Um, we got leprechauns. We got.
Mm.
I don't even like, but anything. I even got one changeling story, and it was a
Oh,
it was
that's
a
all right. That's a
it was
good
a
haul.
genuine changeling story, like one of the really scary ones where, like,
Well, changing
like
stories really freaked me out. Like,
yeah,
really badly freaked
yeah.
me out.
But it was the young
That,
wife one. It was one of the young wives one where, like,
oh,
a great grandfather had to go and, like, get back his wife, kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah. So many of them. I mean, yeah. I so I just think, yeah, the changing that, as we discussed, the changeling aspect of folklore is so dark, and I think there must have been so much room for abuse and
Yeah.
general awfulness within that realm amongst the humans,
Mm.
that it really, really freaks me out. But I think with the stories, I think with the in the prison, I mean, again, that's just kind of a mark of humanity, isn't it? It's like, what brings us together more than
Yeah.
stories? Nothing.
Yeah.
It breaks down
Exactly.
barriers and it breaks
Exactly.
the ice, and everyone loves those kind of stories because they're fascinating. And I think part of us likes to, even though there are strictures around it and there are warnings, I think people, there's a romance. There's a something about believing there's this other world. There's something else out there, that there is some kind of spirit
Yeah.
who warns when death is approaching, or who laments and sometimes engages with us,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
in a more personal way. So there's something about, an unbroken chain of contact,
Mm.
which is
Mm.
just
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, partly thanks to the fact that maybe Ireland stayed rural and very poor for a long time. You know, and that managed to kind of keep its foothold here if there is that kind of contact. But stories are great. I mean, I've sat in rooms with, you know, people and that, you know, they just come out with these things and you're like, wow, that's just, you know, oh yeah, we had a puka in an outhouse. Really? Okay. Do tell.
Yeah.
You know, with some archaeologists one time, and this one man, it's quite a prominent one, was like, "Oh yeah, I know. I was working at a place, and the puka was there." And he would down persuade everyone. I mean, and they were like, "No," and he was like, "I'm telling you now, I saw stuff that was just being thrown about, and there's no explanation for it." Yeah, and he was like, "Well, okay," but I, you know, whatever it is, I just think listening and understanding, and for me with these stories as well, there's not only that aspect of it, but it's about, well, where did they come from? Why is it in these certain areas that these ones are told? Why is it so unified but also can be so different across really small distances and in regions? You know, especially the Banshee, she seems to react in different ways no matter which part of Ireland
That's
you're
really
in.
fascinating. And as well, like the thing I love about the Banshee, so when I was first doing my master's, I was originally going to do it, I ended up doing it on Owen, but I was originally going to do it on the fairy faith. And I have written a book on the fairy faith as well. So there was a lot of research obviously involved, like just setting all that up. And, you know, and I'm used to going back the way, right? And, you know, even that about the prison, like they were all older relatives and all the rest of it, right? But I was like, I wonder, like, in the next generation, like from me, you know? So I went to my own kids and I was like, does anybody, do ye or do any of your friends or anything have any stories? And of course, initially it was like, nah, that's a load of shite, you know, blah, blah, blah. No. Well, actually, yeah, there is that girl that like says that she saw the Banshee. Oh, and there was, oh yeah, two girls I know said that they've heard the Banshee. And one saw it and one heard it. And I was like, okay, so like one was in Roscommon and one would be around here in Waterford. And I was like, okay, so one saw it, one heard it. And again, there's regional differences. There's just would not give me names, would not let me dig in because they're kids, right? But like this is, you know, older teens, young adults, and there's still those things happening. You know, even Blind Boy wrote his first book. And for anybody who doesn't know the Blind Boy podcast, it's amazing. One of the first, when he started the podcast, one of the first stories he told was to read out one of the chapters where the Banshee shows up, and he ends up having a bit of a sexual encounter with the Banshee. It's just so funny, like. But again, you know, it's just part of modern culture as much as it is a part of older culture, I think, like, you know.
Yeah, I think, and this relates a bit back to something we were talking about earlier as well. I think we've traditionally had not a problem, but it's never been easy to translate kind of older Irish cultural references like the tales into modern culture. And part of it, I think, was gatekeeping. Part of it was, you know, shepherding this idea of an Irish identity, and it's nothing about the tales could ever be changed or altered, or, you know, despite the fact the tales grew organically and have changed numerous
How many
times.
different versions do we have of them? Like recensions.
Many different versions, but you know, there's an idea of canon and it's linked to being Irish, and you know, you learn the tales. But I think there's so much richness there that maybe isn't getting across, that's not accessible to lots of people because it hasn't really converted into modern culture. It might be future generations who do it, really.
Yeah. That was actually my, like, the only, I mean, I call it fiction, but it wasn't really fiction. But like the only time I ever kind of attempted anything like that was to try and, like my book, the Tales of Old Ireland Retold, where I was so enmeshed in all these, like, you know, medieval source stories. I was like, well, how does that translate, you know, and how do you make it accessible and all the rest of it? So I rewrote, only short, like, but I rewrote a book full of them. And again, like, but the thing that gets me is when somebody kind of takes something that either just takes a name or just takes one idea or a misconception of something, like that the Morrigan is evil or that the Banshee causes death. You know, like a death messenger is not the cause of death. She doesn't kill anybody, right? But that would be a very common misconception, say, about the Banshee. And then they kind of hinge a whole story around that, like, so they've got the basics wrong. That's the bit I like, that's where my my purism comes in, I don't like that. But when you're actually taking the real source material and letting that inspire you and letting that translate, that's what I wanted to play with in that book, and I mean, I like it. I get good reviews on it, but and John does it as well in his Tales of a Dagda Bard, where he has a very personal relationship with the Dagda, and he understands or believes, depending on your point of view, that the Dagda actually wanted his stories to be retold, because the Dagda was being understood as this kind of almost like a fool, a glutton, and certainly at the time when John would have started writing and teaching about him, there was very little. Like, technically, he was like the king of the Tuatha Danann for a while, great, but the only real story was like his extended belly and his farting and his gluttony, and that was all that was out there, So so I think John's actually done a great job of exploring the Dagda's masculinity, in the context of his time, but also in the context of our times, of how that can be relevant now, So I think it can be done. And as you say, there's a huge, rich vein that is relatively untapped there, but it has to be done right,
It's about getting it across, isn't it? I'm just thinking to myself as you're talking there, I think we should do podcasts on 10 things not to do to fuck off the fairies, and 5-minute digests of the best tales you can have, just to kind of get it across to people. It's like, actually, this stuff is completely brilliant and strange, and you'd actually love it. But don't be put off by the massive books on it. Here's the key stuff. He used to get so worked up that women had to bare their breasts to calm him down. I'm not sure how that worked, but it's that kind of madness in a way, that frenzy.
I've often wondered if those stories about him and Ferdia were true, then maybe it was like, oh, boobies. That would
that stopped him in his tracks. He's like, ew. And they're like, put a cloak on him.
Yeah.
Get him in. Put him in the bath right now. Show your boobs. Let's go. They're like, oh, for fuck's sake, you've got the women going, jeez, again. Right, come on, let's go. Put down the churn. Let's fucking do it again.
Okay.
And also there's an element of the stuff we have to do for this bloody man.
I know.
Again. Fuck's sake.
Fucking
So actually, you could be right.
Boy.
He could be like, oh no.
Yeah. No, ew.
No, I've been like that before. He's like, don't want any of that.
Yeah. Well, if you're feeling sick, you're not going to be in your rage monster zone, are you?
They're going to be like, here, look at this. Oh, and he's like, oh, fucking hell.
Oh, man.
It's put me off my stride. Thanks.
Me off my rear strand.
I tell you, that's the end of that. It's the end of that warp spasm for today, ladies. Thanks a million.
Absolutely.
You just think the shout will go out, won't you? You'll go, get them. He's on one again. Get them. I'm doing something else here.
Mm-hmm.
You better come out. He's late, wasted 10 farms already. Right, here I come. Come on. Anyone who's post-puberty, get your arse on the battlements. Let's go. This fella's not going to calm down.
Maybe we should. Well, look, we're doing this interview here on the channel, and we're going to have this. There is a series, so we're kind of in the middle of recording a few different videos here. So I guess if people want more, comment below, and if you have any specific questions, comment below. We might pull together an AMA for Gillian at one point. Ask me anything. I don't know if we need to go that
within
far.
reason.
Within reason. Ask me anything except to show you my boobies.
Yeah, or to meet a fairy, because I'm going to go, no thanks.
No.
Oh, is that the time?
Yeah. And we are going to be definitely check out the other videos on this channel with Dr. Gillian Kenny, and of course all the other videos with our other teachers and myself and John talking. And if people are interested in more on the Banshee, Gillian has a class at the Irish Pagan School. There will be a link below to all of Gillian's classes, but she has a class called the Banshee, which is an exploration of history and folklore of Ireland's death messenger. So that is available on demand at the Irish Pagan School right now. And there's plenty of other classes on the fairies and all sorts of other fascinating topics as well. So thanks so much for that. It's a little bit of an impromptu one there for this video, but we will get back to the other recordings. So, Slán, and we'll see you next time. Check out the links below.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.